So, Matt, I have a great idea.
Uh-oh.
That wasn't what I was expecting, but I have a great idea for getting money towards the podcast so we can make money on the podcast. And
Uh-oh.
it's way better than ad revenue.
Uh-oh. Okay, yeah,
So
no, I'm ready.
I was randomly watching the Golden Girls because I do that because I'm 80.
Mhm.
And there was an episode where all the Golden Girls, they went on these auction dates with people and like people would pay money. Yeah, it's great. And it was like, wow, this looks like such fun, right? So what
Mhm.
if we auctioned you off? We just put you out there and people can bid on you to
Oh,
date.
no.
We take that money and we invest it to the podcast. Who wants to go
Oh,
on a
no.
date with
Okay.
Matt Aucamp?
Okay. All right. Here's my feelings about this.
Matt, we don't have
Uh,
time for that. We got to start the podcast.
but wait, hey, hold on. Wait, I have reactions. Hey everybody, and welcome to Save Your Game. I am Matt Aucamp, and with me is my co-host, Pushing Up Roses.
Hey, how come I don't get a nickname? I
My special boy, Pushing
Special
Up
boy.
Roses.
That's me.
Mhm.
Just a
What
precocious special boy over here.
is there a nickname beyond Pushing Up Roses that people have for you?
No, I don't
Okay.
think that. Just no. I mean, but nobody says pushing up roses. Like that's my artist name. I sign my stuff that way. That's my channel name. But people call me Roses, and that's been.
Right.
Isn't that interesting that nobody really calls me Per? There are some people, but I find that very interesting because with people, it's usually more of an acronym that they call them. But mine is just Roses. I've just always gone with that.
Right. I can understand why people would say roses out loud, but you're saying even in like text, people don't do PUR, people do.
Right. Yeah. Even in
Even though
text.
purr is a sweet kitty sound.
It is sweet, isn't it? I like both. I'll answer to both. I'll answer to a lot
Sweet
of things.
sweet kitty cat pushing up roses.
Oh,
Is
sweet.
that that might be too like that might be too you don't want people at a convention to come up to
Calling
you
me
and be
sweet
like,
kitty cat.
"Hey,
No.
sweet kitty cat."
I would feel very negatively about that.
Yeah.
You might not survive my presence.
I have no idea how I'm going to deal with it if we ever say like do a live show or go to like a gaming convention or something and somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, it's the special boy." Like
Matt
what am I
Aucamp.
what am I going to do? Like am I going to just start swinging? I don't know.
That's when you show all of your abilities that make you unique and
Yeah.
precious and special. So like good jumper. That's when you're like, watch me jump. And then you
I
jump
jump over
really
their
high.
head and then I bench press them
Yeah.
and then I just
That's what makes
leave
you
and they're
you.
just
Then
like
you just leave.
bewildered.
And you just leave.
So, roses,
Yes.
purr.
Yes.
What have you been playing?
So, should I lead again with Stardew Valley?
Oh
No,
my
let's
god.
not. Sorry. I will not.
No, I think we might be able to talk about Stardew Valley next week because I just today picked up a game that has strong Stardew Valley vibes. So even though this is an adventure game podcast, maybe next week you guys will all be treated to some more Stardew Valley talk.
Look, I will die on this hill by saying I think Stardew Valley has a lot of adventure game aspects to it, and I cannot be swayed otherwise.
Okay.
And Married Life with Elliot, it's going great.
Okay.
Elliot in the game, obviously. I'm not married to anybody named Elliot.
You could be.
I could be. I am not.
I mean, not like I'm suggesting you have a secret
I have a
Elliot
secret-
in your life.
I have a
I'm
secret
saying
Elliot, yeah.
I'm saying, if you want us to find you somebody named Elliot to marry, I don't think it'll be that hard.
Yeah, taking applications.
All Elliots. If you are Elliot, please email us at mattandroses@gmail.com. You might be able to marry Roses. Okay, so what have you actually been playing, or what have you been playing
Yeah.
besides Stardew Valley?
So, just very randomly, I was on the Switch just looking for adventure games because I noticed there were more adventure games on the Switch than I thought. I had played Hobbs Barrow on the Switch, so I'm like, you know what? Let's keep it going. I can play adventure games in my bed, not at my desktop, and that would be great. So I found a game called Just Ignore Them, and it is a legit adventure game with a horror element to it. It
Okay.
looks like a very cutesy game the way it's framed. It's in full screen as well. I think that's on purpose. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what they did to make this game, but it's by Stranger Games, like
Okay.
stranger but with an A instead, but like strange.
Stra- so like
You guys
Stranga.
like Stranga, yeah, like Stranga. Maybe
Stranga
it is.
Games.
I mean, that's a horror name too. Maybe it is. I assume it's Stranger, but maybe it is Stranga. I don't know. Um,
I've introduced the concept of self-doubt.
I hope they're not listening. But anyway, I played this game and I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit on the simpler side in terms of puzzle design and but especially dialogue.
Okay.
But it is very, very creepy. I think it has the same problem that most horror games has. This is not unique, where if you use the same gimmick over and over again, it is not going to be scary anymore. I think
Mhm.
we talked about Dredge when there were horror elements in Dredge, they were
Right.
frightening at first, but then they kept happening as a mechanic, and I
Agreed.
was just over it.
I've heard about like a good strategy for dealing with horror. Like if you're a person who uh can't stand horror games but just because of the scares, like wants to play horror games and it's like I can't stand being chased and the jump scares. um I've heard a good thing to do is just run right at the monster or
Yeah,
whoever's chasing you and then watch yourself get killed and be like, okay, all right, now I know the worst that can happen.
yeah.
And then as you play, like suddenly he's not so scary anymore.
No, it's like that's like exposure therapy, honestly. You
Right.
just face
Yeah.
it, and then that's what it is. Yeah.
I just wanted to I just wanted to point out that this is it seems like one of those RPG Maker adventure games.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
definitely it's got the Pokemon style like
Y-
isometric
yes.
pixel art thing going on.
It's very cute to look at. It's almost
And
jarring.
I just looked up Stranger Games
Mhm.
and I didn't realize these are the people who made Red Bow.
I'm not sure what that is, but I
It is
guess you
a
do.
yeah, it is in another I have not played it, but I have heard many good things about it. It is an
Oh,
indie,
great.
RPG maker horror game about a girl who's wearing a little red bow. So
Yeah.
maybe we play this one too. Maybe we play Red Bow and I'll try out Just Ignore Them.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen caps for Red Bow, and it actually looks really good. It looks more detailed than Just Ignore Them. So maybe I'll have to give that one a go as well.
Yeah, and like I definitely want to try Just Ignore Them. I've always kind of wanted to play Red Bow. So, yeah, maybe we
Nice.
just play both of them.
I don't want to give away too many spoilers because in adventure games, really all you have is the narrative. But
Right.
basically, you
Tell
are
us how
playing
to
a.
solve one puzzle.
No, what?
Okay.
Absolutely not. Get out of here.
Okay, yeah. All right. Basically, you're playing.
Yeah, you're playing a character. You begin when you're 8 years old, and as an 8 year old, you witness a traumatizing event that kind of haunts you for your entire life, and something is basically following you around, like the movie It Follows. But also, there's an actual thing that you see on the screen. You know what's following you,
Right.
and it's somehow related to your father. There's a little mystery
Ah.
going on too.
I think It Follows is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. There
That's
are
very bizarre to me.
there are moments there are well because conceptually it's scary, but then there are moments there are like visuals in that movie that just stick with me and I don't think will ever go away.
Which one? Can you like do you have an example?
There's a moment where you're expecting a jump scare and it doesn't happen, and then all of the sudden this horrifying man walks into the room and it is the
Oh.
scariest thing. It happens so gently, it happens without a music hit or anything, so, like,
Yeah.
the idea of somebody just randomly walking into a room that I'm in, like, just a stranger just walking into the room, and this stranger looks incredibly scary in this scene.
Yeah. The whole concept of it follows is kind of horrifying and
Yeah.
heavy-handed. And what have you been playing?
So I've been spending okay, first I'll say I finished Blood Nova, uh, which we talked about, I think, the first episode. I think I even said on that episode it's a very complicated sci-fi magic
Mhm.
narrative, um, with a lot of complex, you know, terminology babble, and
Yeah.
it gets so much worse towards the end. I'm sure how every character's arc wraps up, but I'm not sure what the rest of the plot was. It's just the sort of thing where your brain glazes over because
Oh,
everybody's
no.
saying too many words that are not real words or terms that are not real terms. And
Oh,
like
no.
it gets to the point where you're like listening to a prophecy that's based on astrological signs that aren't real about historical figures that aren't real, uh on planets that aren't real, and it's just like there's no way I
Right.
would need a graph to track these sentences. I also have been just spending so much time uh bopping around the islands of insight, solving all the unlimited puzzles. I think there is no, maybe there's not a limit because some of them refresh, but it is really gripped me.
Wow.
I keep finding here's the thing. I already talked about how there's such a huge variety of puzzles
Mhm.
that you never get bored because there's always a if you aren't digging a specific type of puzzle, you can always go to a different one. I have found since I said that on this podcast, I found like 7 more puzzle types.
So, are there any fetch quests, or are these logic puzzles that you come across in game and you solve them?
They are basically all logic puzzles, and most of them have
No.
I know. Most of them have to do with perspective. So again, it'll
No.
be like there's a bunch of floating rings, and you have to find the exact spot where you can look through all the yellow rings and not through any of the purple rings. There are
Ah,
match 3 puzzles where it's like you do a match 3 grid, but you have to do it perfectly. So you have to think ahead of where each tile is going to fall so that you don't end up with any tiles left at the end.
that hurts my brain. Really, this is Sierra's fault. I grew up on the stupidest puzzles that I love, by the way. I say it in love, and now I'm lost at at logical puzzles.
Yeah. You know, the more I play it too, the more I'm thinking it's like one of those, those logic puzzle books you get in like the puzzles and games section of a Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, the ones I ignore?
Like
Yeah.
it's almost like that, but in a video game form. It's just a constant stream of what you could maybe call brain teasers. But
Oh
again,
god.
in this lush, like beautiful environment that again, the narrative, which is barely there, takes itself very seriously.
And that's the MMO, so I could
Yes.
boot that up and we could essentially play together, yeah?
Which I believe we plan to do and might be
Yeah.
out even before this episode airs or around the time this episode airs.
I think it's a great idea. I think that we should both boot ourselves in and you can help me or just listen to me vent about how much I don't like logic puzzles. If I find a
Yeah.
slider puzzle, I'm gonna flip a table.
And we can just run around this this weird glowy world together. As far as is it an adventure game? Kind of and kind of not. It's more just a puzzle game, but there is a narrative there, and it is super fun, and I'm enjoying it a lot. So, Roses,
Yes.
this episode, I believe, we plan to go in depth into Hobbs Barrow.
Let's go.
We're going to be getting into spoilers here, probably not at the beginning. So if you want to listen to the first half of this discussion and then turn it off, we don't blame you. But
It's
hopefully
okay.
you've played Hobbs Barrow and can hang with us the whole way through. You want to go talk about Hobbs Barrow with me?
I am so down to talk about Hobbs Barrow. I felt late to the party on that one because it had been out for I think that like at least a year and a half, and everybody was recommending it to me, and it was published by Wadjet, so these are people I trust, and it looked so cool. And then I don't know what happened. It just slid by me
Yeah.
as I dived deeper into Stardew Valley.
Okay,
So
let's
many
play the break
regrets.
music. Let's play the break music, and we'll come back. We'll talk all about Stardew Valley. I mean, Hobbs Barrow. I mean, let's just talk about Islands of Insight again. Roses,
Yes, Matt.
how's your break?
It was pretty good. I had a coffee, or I have a coffee. I took very long, tedious sips of said coffee, and now I'm feeling stoked.
Did you explore any ancient burial mounds?
Not today. That is usually a weekend activity for me.
Okay, yeah.
You understand. It's very
It's
involved.
it's hard to do it as a job. Not a lot of people are willing to pay you for it.
No, there's no one willing to pay me for that. I just gotta hope to find something amazing and not cursed.
What's the best thing you ever found in a burial mound?
In the ground?
Yeah.
Oh, like a coin?
Okay, hold on. You so you robbed an underground grave, and inside you found like a penny, and you were like, "This rules."
Look, it was geocaching and I found like a weird little pendant, okay?
What if geocaching added that up? What if you? Oh man. Okay. All right.
Oh boy.
Proposal. Extreme geocaching, where instead of just like this is hidden behind a street sign or in a tree hollow, it's like this is hidden in a coffin in a graveyard.
Oh god.
Try not to get arrested. Or like this is hidden underneath a ledge of a cliff that's 30,000 feet in the air. Are any cliffs on Earth 30,000 feet in the air? I don't know how big anything is.
He has no concept of size.
Right? Yeah. This is hidden. This geocache is hidden underneath a cruise ship. So you have
Wait, underneath the cruise ship.
like attached it magnetically to the bottom of
Oh
its
my
hull.
god. Now that's an adventure game puzzle right there.
Yeah, extreme geocaching. I would play a game like that.
I would too. But I would probably not want to excavate cursed burial sites, which is
This is
exactly
hidden-
what you have to do.
This is hidden in Joe Biden's armpit. Good luck.
What, is it just taped in there? He's just or is,
he
or is he
doesn't-
holding it the whole time?
He doesn't even notice. He's just his granddaughter taped it in there when he wasn't paying attention and then put it up on extremegeocaching.org.
Man, you know what? What I'm taking away from this convo is that we should design an adventure game. We know what we're doing. We know
Yeah, we got it.
know puzzle design, guys.
We got this. Hey,
We got
Francisco, Dave, Ron,
Someone hire us.
Roberta, step out of the way. We're the new kings of the adventure game genre.
Yeah, if you see a puzzle, if you
find
see a
Joe
puzzle where
Biden's
there's a
armpit.
coin in a character's armpit, you'll know that it came from us.
All right. So, Excavation of Hob's Barrow
Yes.
is a game.
Oh, I thought it was just an event.
Yeah, it's did you get my Facebook invite? To excavate Hobbs Barrow? No, it's by Cloak and Dagger. It's by Cloak and Dagger Games, and then published by Wadjet.
Yes, our good friends.
We've talked about it a little bit before, but the game is about it's a pixel art kind of game, and you are an antiquarian, which is an antiquated word for like an archaeologist. Various types of anthropologists would have been called antiquarians back in the day, right? And your name is Thomasina Bateman, and you are the game picks up where you're writing a letter to your mom, and you're on a train to a little town called Biole. In I guess it seems like northern England, right?
I couldn't tell if it was England or Scotland, to be honest. Maybe it's meant to be ambiguous.
I feel like it's in the borderlands. I feel like it's the North England or
Okay.
Southern Scotland. I feel like it's in that region because it's got sprawling moors covered in heather, and it's got those ambiguous accents where you're like, is that
Yeah.
Scottish or is that just a very cold Englishman, a
Yeah.
chilly Englishman?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very countryside, so you're
Yeah.
essentially in the moors.
I guess you could call this a horror game. It's folk horror, so you're not going to get a lot of jump scares. You're not going to get a lot of like guys with
Chainsaws.
chainsaw. Yeah, yeah. You're not going to get any. You're not really going to get any direct threats. You have an underlying threat
Yeah.
that you don't even really know is real.
Right. Yeah, this game is based on atmosphere and just the suspense that you get trying to figure out a town's secret. And I think we definitely described a lot of Hobbs Barrow in previous episodes, so we don't have to go
Mhm.
too in depth. But obviously, we're going to go in depth
Yeah.
for some of the themes and for especially the ending, which upset me, to be frank. Um,
And I think we
um,
will. Why don't we try and dance around the ending and the mysteries until we get like about maybe like halfway through this discussion, and then
okay,
we'll
that's
warn
fair.
people, and then
Yeah, that's
then
fair.
we'll just go for it.
But it's I think I described it last time as because we said folk horror. It's very Wicker Man, very Midsummer. That's kind of the vibe that you're going to get. Except I would argue that it's even more folk horror than some of those things. I don't it's got like an old, well, it's set in Victorian times. So maybe that's why I'm equating it with like, oh, it feels old and historic. And yeah,
Right.
it is set right Victorian times, I believe is what they said.
I Yes, and I it is Victorian times, and I played the game with director's commentary on,
Oh, nice.
and every single folk horror movie that they referenced that was an inspiration, I had never heard of at all.
What? Really?
Yeah,
So
it was
Wicker
all
Man.
stuff. No, it wasn't Wicker Man.
Oh, did
No
they
Wicker
say like
Man.
Twin Peaks?
Nope. They said it was uh, a bunch of really obscure
Oh,
folk horror movies that probably neither of us have heard of.
okay.
They sounded like English folk horror, and also they mentioned that Lovecraft was a bigger influence in the original concept of the game, and a lot of
Right.
that fell away. And I can see that the biggest Lovecraftian element of it is this idea of a deeper power, this deeper
Yes.
structure of power hiding beneath the world,
Yeah.
um, that you don't fully understand. And I guess we'll get into that when we get towards the ending. But
And like even the town of strange
mhm,
people too, I think is very Lovecraftian. The town of like some people seem to know something, there's a secret and we don't even know who's friendly and who's not. There were times in
right,
that game I thought like I was going to get offed by the bartender. I really didn't know who
right.
was going to be an ally to our character.
And the idea of a person of science being so overwhelmed by observations that they can't explain
Yes.
is also very Lovecraftian. But yeah, let's talk about that. About the townsfolk. There are a bunch of people you meet along the way, and
Mhm.
some of the most threatening people turn out to be your allies, and some of the most fr- uh, friendly people turn out to be conspiring deeply against you.
Yeah.
One of the first people you meet is this man named Arthur Tillett.
Arthur, good old Arthur Tillett. We had a real bad run in, but he ended up being an ally throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, so yeah, you first encounter him when he just like comes up and starts hitting on you and tries to
Yeah.
kiss you.
He's
He's drunk.
drunk.
He's stumbling
Yeah.
outside of a tavern. I think the very first playthrough, because I was like timid about it, not wanting to alienate any characters, because I didn't know if this was a game based on like your choices have consequences later on, and it's not really. Like your choices will affect achievements on Steam, but they won't really affect the narrative that
I
much.
was wondering about that. The game had me wondering because, yeah, you do get these dialogue choices and they're based on like trust.
Hmm.
So, like, for example, the bartender will ask you, what did you do last night? I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
And you can say like, "Oh, be honest, you trust him," or just kind of make it vague. Don't tell him because you don't trust him. So I was kind of wondering if that mechanic did anything. What do you think about that? What do you think about a mechanic that offers you choices, but they don't ultimately they don't affect the end of the game? What is your opinion?
Hmm. Well, okay, so I'll say this: they do affect that. Like, there are scenes that you miss, or
Okay.
variations of scenes. Like, the scene happens, but it happens a little differently depending on what you choose. But it's hard because I think it's good if you can let go of your like completionist ideas,
Right.
and you can suspend your disbelief. I think when you have games that have choices, I always get stressed out about like how do I know I'm making the right choice? Should I
Yeah.
save and try both choices and see what happens? And then am I going to have to play the whole game twice? Like, I get all in my head about it. But I think the best thing to do is give yourself over to it and be like, okay, how do I feel in this moment? And I'm just going to go through. You could always play the game again if you want to.
Yeah. Or
How do you,
say restore load a previous thing.
right? How do you feel about it?
I'm having heard you say that, I'm actually a little more conflicted about it now because part of me is like I'm a little disappointed, right? Because I am somebody who is very serious about my choices in these games.
Right,
When I play games that have choices, I am full in. You know what I mean? I want to
right.
go this route. But you are right in that it doesn't exactly do nothing. It your choices will trigger certain scenes. I do recall that happening
Right.
now.
And all art is illusion, right? Like,
Yeah.
every piece of art is generally trying to make you feel something deeper than the thing actually is. So if you feel as you're playing like your choices matter, then they did for the sake of that piece of art, even if technically they didn't.
Yeah, and it's also just nice to have a character because you are playing a narrative. It's nice to have a
Mhm.
character that has different, dialogue choices.
Right.
It's not terribly different from like Curse of Monkey Island where you get it, or Grimm where you get a ton of dialogue trees, and they don't exactly change the ending. It's
They
going to
don't
end the way it
change.
ends.
Yeah, and in most of those games, like, they don't change anything besides what the person says to you right afterwards.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Every now and then in an adventure game, it'll be like, you can make a person so mad they stop talking to you, but usually it's a person who, like, is gonna stop talking to you either way, but if
Yeah.
you've made them mad, you'll click on them and they'll be like, "Buzz off," and if you didn't make them mad, your character will just be like, "I have nothing more to say to them." It's basically the same thing, but
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess because it had this trust theme going on,
Mhm.
I really wanted to make the right decisions for Thomasina.
Yeah,
They give Thomasina such a sad and yet quote like inspiring story. Her dad was an excavator who had an accident and was comatose basically. So he's paralyzed, he doesn't talk. I don't think he reacts to anything, but he is alive essentially. And
right.
so she had a very strong bond with her father, and he taught her how to excavate. He really sparked her love for excavation, and now she wants to follow in his footsteps. And so there's some very nice storyline elements for that, and I just want things to turn out good for Thomasina. But I
Right.
guess the game with the choices it gives you, like trust, don't trust, your fate is basically set as soon as you get on the island. Like a lot of folk horror,
Right.
it's there. You went to that island, your fate is set, and that's it.
Did you slap Arthur?
Did I? No, I don't think I slapped him. I do not think
Yeah.
I slapped him.
So my first playthrough, I think, again, like I was saying, I was trying to make all the right choices, and I was afraid things were
Right.
going to come back to haunt me. So I think I was really gracious to him, uh, and just like, okay, he's drunk. It's fine. I know he doesn't mean it. But
Yeah.
then in this playthrough, I slapped him, and he comes
Oh.
back, and he's just kind of like, yeah, I deserved that.
Oh, nice, nice.
Like, I think at
Very
first he
nice.
like calls you a bitch and walks away, and then later he comes back and he's like, that was my bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
dude. And he comes off as like a cad because the next time you see him, he cons you into giving him a drink and he runs away.
Right, although we later find out that there is something to that,
A little
which you
more
kinda know
complicated,
right
yeah.
away. Like, in a folk horror, when things are not going well,
Mhm.
like, something's afoot,
I also
especially
had
when people disappear. I thought Arthur was not coming back. I thought that that's what the game was setting up with that little thing,
right.
because generally in something horror, if somebody disappears, they don't come back. So I'm going to give a lot of credit to the game and the writers here for bringing him back alive and making him more part of the game. I found that refreshing and I liked it a lot. That's a big positive to me.
They do that a lot, and there's a lot of themes that just recur and recur in this game. And when we get to the spoiler section, I do want to talk to you about what I think might have been going on with Arthur Tillett. I
Okay.
think there's more than the game explains, but
Oh.
there is this theme with Thomasina of men letting her down and disappearing or running out on
Mhm.
her. From her father
Yeah.
leaving on an excavation, and there's a flashback where she's very upset with him and coming back comatose.
Right.
And now she spends the rest of her life sort of chasing this lost father,
Right.
by again trying to, like you said, trying to follow in his footsteps and visiting him comatose at the hospital constantly.
Yeah.
uh, and then in the game, the first thing that happens to you is the character you're there to meet isn't there, just doesn't show up.
That's right.
And
Yeah, that's right.
nobody knows where this guy is. And then the second thing that happens to you is Arthur Tillett asks for a drink and says he'll give you this information and then disappears.
And
And then,
disappears.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff that happens in between this, but then the third big thing that happens to you is your assistant, Kenneth, who's supposed to meet you in Bewley with your money and your equipment. The train shows up and he's not there.
And he
And
forgets to send you your money. Like, he
he forgets
sends
to send
you
you
equipment and didn't send you
Mhm.
any money.
And he sends you a letter just saying, "Oh, something important happened in London. I won't be there."
I wonder about that. I wonder, like, cause kinda like we were saying about fate in folk horror, like, did
Yeah.
something happen to Kenneth? We'll never know because the way this game ends, you're not gonna know.
Yeah, it leaves a question, and yeah, like you're saying, like, I don't have that much experience with folk horror, but it reminds me of in Midsummer how often people debate everything that happens in that movie and are like, "Well, was this masterminded? Was this
Yeah.
suicide actually a murder? Was this accident actually something that somebody orchestrated?" And the answer is you don't know, and you'll
Yeah,
never
you don't
know.
know. But that you're right, you're so right, though, there's a theme of abandonment in general because there's also this is very interesting, there's also a point where you meet a worker of a nobleman who is like, what's his status? What is the nobleman's status? They have like a
L-
governor.
he's the lord. He
He's just
owns
a
the
lord.
land.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he owns Bewley essentially.
Yeah.
And you meet one of his like maids slash workers, and she wants to get out of this situation. She doesn't want to be a cleaner or a
Right.
maid, and she's waiting for the milkman. She's kind of having a romance with the town's milkman, and he doesn't get there. Something's wrong. And so we have to go. We promise that we'll go find him, and we do, and we kind of find him just in time. He was clearly somebody had it out for him, or they were sending a warning message because he was all tied up with these hallucinogenic flowers, and we save him essentially. I think that's really interesting. I think it's really interesting that Thomasina, nobody ever saves anyone for her, and yet she's doing all of this saving for other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, in fact, as she's doing all this stuff to help the town, um, help various people in the town. Granted, she's doing it all for her own ends. Anything she does to help somebody
Right.
is to get a favor back in return. But as she's doing all this, like, this town largely is conspiring against her.
Did you feel that every character was conspiring, or do you think there was an element of these characters are allies for the most part?
I think I think there are about 3 characters in the game, and we'll talk about this later in
Okay.
spoilers section, but I think there are about 3 characters in the game that are not conspiring against her, and everybody else is. speaking of making choices, a character, a priest looks at you and says, "Do you believe in God, Miss Bateman?"
Yeah.
How did you answer that?
I don't remember. I didn't. I said. I think I went like if there was an agnostic choice of some sort, I probably went with that. Or I'm a person of science. I did not say I believed. I know that for sure.
So there are two options, and one is saying you don't believe. The
Right.
other, the other one, like saying you're a person of science and you know don't
Yeah.
believe
I
in
think I said
supernatural.
I'm like a person of science.
The other one is saying that your mind is open to it, I think, and it says next to it in parentheses lie,
Yes. Yes.
which is interesting. So you make this important choice early in the game. I don't know what ripples that has
Yeah.
throughout the game, but Thomasina is a person of no faith. It
Right.
just states it right there, regardless of how you answer for her. The game tells you she doesn't believe in anything. And crucially, she thinks she gets that from her dad.
Yes, she does. She has been taught, in the UK there are these fairy rings. It's kind of a little urban legend. Some people I think still believe, but a lot of the time fairy rings are like rings of mushrooms.
Right.
And she believes as a young girl, she believes in
Mhm.
fairy rings and fairies. And her dad says, "Nope, that I hate to tell you this, but that ain't real. It's all nonsense." And so anytime now in adulthood, anytime Thomasina sees something that's beyond science, she just kind of wheels it away and says it's hogwash. And that's because she learned that from her father. Her father was also a man of science.
Right. And she states multiple times when people start to when she starts to learn certain things about her father, she's kind of like, "Well, that can't be true because my dad doesn't believe in this stuff."
Right.
Uh I want to talk. Oh man, there's so much to talk about with this game.
I
Uh,
know.
the color palette, for example,
The earthy greens and browns.
except for there's one there's one screen that we return to often where this color palette is vibrant and bright and
Oh.
very pretty.
Let me think.
And
Let me think.
yeah,
You said we revisit it often?
yes,
Oh gosh. Is it our bedroom?
no, it
Okay.
is the flashback to our
Oh,
father when Thomasina's father is still in her life. The flashbacks are all in this beautiful lush garden full of like bright greens and
that's right.
colorful flowers and a white house. And then in flashbacks where he's already in his coma, they're in a dark hospital room,
Dingy,
and
yeah.
the entire rest of the game you're in these gray earthy tones. Most days in Bewley it's raining.
Yep, or
um
foggy and just kind of gross in general.
yeah, exactly. And then towards the end, as things become a little bit more supernatural, the color purple just starts dominating
Yeah.
e- every scene. um which again we'll get into a little bit more in spoilers. Okay, Roses,
Yes.
are you ready to play the new Save Your game show?
What? Me?
Yeah,
I'm being chosen. Woohoo! Yes, I'm
I'm being
ready.
selected from the crowd
I'm ready, Bob.
to play What Do My Pants Weigh?
Oh no, I don't like this game.
So, adventure game characters are known almost ubiquitously for carrying a ton of inventory items around with them all the time, and most of them don't have any sort of pack or satchel or any carrying device whatsoever. Largely, people keep every single thing they find in their pants. So, I want to ask you, Roses, what do you think the largest amount of weight that Thomasina Bateman is carrying in her pants at any given time in this video game?
Oh God. Okay, so I have to think because I know what do I got the book, I got the journal early on, so I remember that. There's like a knife. I'm trying to think
Hmm.
if she has anything insane in her inventory. And I can't think of anything to. Oh, well, does she has the bow? How does she even fit the bow in her pants? How does she even fit that in there?
Yeah, how does she fit? She has a fiddle and a bow that she keeps in her pants. And I will say, she has a fiddle and her bow in her pants at the same time that she has a paraffin lantern, a,
Right?
a masonry chisel, because she uses it to chisel out rocks several times in the
That's
game. So
right. The
it's
chisel.
not just like a little wood chisel; it is a masonry chisel.
Sometimes like a bucket, a whole bucket of milk,
A whole bucket of
a whole
milk
bucket of milk.
that she has at the same time as she has the fiddle. Yes.
I'm gonna say 30 pounds of stuff because of the milk, because of that bucket of goat milk.
So I totaled up the like estimated weights of all the objects she's carrying, and
Okay.
it is when she has the bucket of milk that she is carrying the most objects that she is in the entire game. She
Oh shit.
has a knife, she has an apple, she has a fiddle with a bow, she has a trowel, a paraffin lantern, a chisel, a a letter, like an ammonite
Letter.
like she has so much of a journal, she has so much in her pants at that period of time. She's carrying 21 pounds.
Oh hey, that wasn't too bad.
21.13555 pounds
That's
worth
so annoying. And it's not
of
even in a
objects
backpack, it's just in her pants.
in her pants. But she is wearing suspenders.
Well, okay. Well, thank God for that. Well, now I believe it. Now I've suspended my disbelief, and because of the suspenders, clearly this is rooted in reality.
We also have to mention the fact that this game, Roses, has a loose crank.
Oh my God, it does. It has a loose crank.
It
Have
has a
we
loose
gone
crank.
into this before?
We have
we
not,
done
but
our? Oh God.
we have not, but we should come up with. Okay, listeners, if you want to send this in, if somebody wants to make us a little like alarm, like little theme song for when a game has a loose crank in it, because this is a thing that drives me nuts about adventure games, is how in 70% of them you come across some like slot
Yep.
that they're like, oh, this looks like some sort of widget, but it's missing a crank or sometimes a lever. And then
Yep.
later, you just find scattered about the world a loose crank, and you're like, oh, I guess I will go back and put the crank in the hole and crank the thing. Like, Roses, how many times in real life have you found a loose crank on the ground?
Never. 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 Never ever once.
Never once. How about a loose lever?
No.
Yeah, how about a loose switch, a loose any
No.
sort of simple machinery?
Nope.
Just
I've never come across one. And like these loose
Yeah.
like cranks, they're in very like in this game, it was in a very obvious, like you could see it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, a loose crank.
They're everywhere. It's that sort of thing that once you see it, you can't stop seeing how many loose cranks there are in like every single adventure game. And there's a lot of like the adventure game standard inventory items in this game, right? Like you get your knife, you get your lantern, you get like a handkerchief that you have to use to pick up a broken piece of glass, like all the normal stuff. But I could not believe, I thought I was free of the loose cranks in
No,
Excavation
never.
of Hob, Barrow, and then I find myself holding a loose crank.
There's loose cranks everywhere. We almost called this podcast Loose Cranks.
Loose cranks, but we thought it would sound too much like naming your improv troupe Mixed Nuts. Like just a little too cheesy. Like, oh, we're a couple of loose cranks, me and you.
Or it could almost sound like pornographic. So I'm like, maybe not.
Oh,
Maybe
come
not
on
that.
now. Come
What?
on now.
What? I'm just saying.
So before we get into spoilers, I do also want to talk about real quick the idea of folk traditions. And they are all throughout this game. There's, first of all, I didn't know this until I listened to the commentary. The game was based around an actual antiquarian named Thomas Bateman, who excavated a place called Hobhurst's Hall.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And I believe I might be mixing up anecdotes from the developers, but I also believe that this Hobhurst Hall was there was folklore in the town about there being some sort of goblin.
Yeah, and the game does, and we'll get more into the spoilers, but the game does take from real legends. Like they're not
Yeah,
making they're not necessarily making up legends and urban myth.
right.
They're inspired by somewhere.
Right, even there's a point where a little boy is talking about fighting some kind of worm. Do you remember what it's called?
I do. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but now that but thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that conversation back up. Yeah, because he said he saw it.
He said he saw it. So ag ag again, this is something I learned from the developer's commentary. Apparently, that's just another folk legend. It doesn't have to do with the rest
Got
of the
it.
plot of the game, but they that they might make a game about that worm in the future. But
That'd be amazing. I love
there's
that.
a there's a point where her father sings a song called the Barrow Digger song, which is an supposedly an actual folk song about that was sung by barrow diggers
Nice.
that the developers found in some old book about like a history of the subject. They talk about fairy rings. Yeah, they talk
Yep.
about goblin lore. It's really interesting, and I think like um at some point you come across this like weird demon head that is based on a real mask that is part of English folk history. The mask is called uh, the Dorset Ooser,
Nice.
and it's just like this wooden head mask that was found, found somewhere in England, and then in 1981 or 1987, yeah, stolen and has never been found again.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's slightly horrifying.
So there's so it's that's another interesting thing about this game is there's just there you can take the things that they talk about in this game and you could go research them, and there's history behind so much of it.
And I think this kind of stuff is very traditional and works so well with adventure games because if you think about some of the first mainstream graphic adventure games, they
Yeah.
had a lot of fairy tale settings, a lot of sometimes folklore as well. I think those things kind of hold hands. I love fairy tales. I love folklore. That's the kind of
Yeah.
fantasy that I really like, more so than like wizards and elves. Like I love me some like folklore. I think that
Yeah.
stuff is so interesting. I mean, my first experience with an adventure game was King's Quest 3, which had like the three bears in it
Yeah.
and like other in pirates and stuff like that. So I think that the folk horror in Hobbs is so fitting
Mhm.
for this kind of game, honestly, and it's amazing.
Speaking of King's Quest, how much do you think King Graham pants weigh?
Oh God, I
How much
mean,
him? Yeah, how much him pants weigh?
how much in pants weigh? You have no idea how much stuff I put in my pants in all the King's Quest games. I'm
I
gonna
do because
say,
I did it too.
yeah, I'm gonna say Alexander might have had it the worst in King's Quest 6. We put some like weird stuff in our pants, and a lot of it was liquid, and I don't quite understand.
We'll definitely come back around and play
Yeah.
how much do my pants weigh in future episodes. But okay, Roses, do you want
Yes.
to just for a brief few seconds play our interstitial music so that people can get the heck out of here if they don't want to hear spoilers,
That is a
and
great idea, Matt.
if they want to rejoin us after this conversation, we'll play the same music again
Okay,
at the end
perfect.
of this
Okay, we
conversation.
will see you then.
Okay, she murders her father.
Whoa, whoa, Matt! You can't
What?
just.
We're in spoiler section.
Oh my god. Well,
Oh man,
that's
yeah.
the episode. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Uh,
That's true. She does murder her father.
yeah. Now that we're in the spoiler section, I think it's important to talk about. Like, I think this game is about. So it's about Thomasina undoing her father's life work. Like he. Okay, so to catch people up, the town was basically all in on this conspiracy. Everybody except, do you know the three I was talking about earlier?
I'm gonna say the priest was not in on
Yes,
this because he
correct.
probably thought it was blasphemous, and he was right.
The priest was not in. He was on our side the whole time.
Yeah. I'm gonna say perhaps the holistic medicine woman, Mother Mildred.
Okay, all right. As you
Oh,
said
do we
her
have
name,
different answers?
I just added two more to the list. Yeah, there's a
Okay.
couple more.
The older woman who made the Bakewell
I was
puddings.
gonna say her. Yeah,
Yeah. And you have one more on your list?
Arthur Tillett.
Oh, Arthur Tillett. Okay, see, I thought you were gonna debate me on Arthur, but yes, I would say Arthur
No,
Tillett is an ally.
I
What
think
about wait,
something is happening with Arthur Tillett. But yeah, there's one more I just thought of. Yeah, go ahead.
what about what's his name? Cyril? Cyril?
Cyril, the cranky old
Yeah.
man who is nothing but mean to you. Him and the priest show up right before you dig the barrow, and they're
Yes.
like, "This is
Please
you
don't
have
do
one
this.
last
Yeah.
chance. Don't do this."
Yeah.
Um,
He knew. For whatever reason, Cyril
mhm.
was in on it and knew that something bad was happening.
And then almost every other character in the game you see entering the evil church at the end, which we'll get to. So they are all conspiring to get you to dig up this barrow. So apparently, you find out throughout the game that your father was here and dug up Hobbs Barrow 25 years ago. And it was his exposure to whatever was in Hobbs Barrow that, number one, drove him insane
Right.
and made him catatonic for the rest of his life. Number two, drove the person whose farm Hobbs Barrow is on, his brother, who used to own the farm. During that excavation, he lost his hand somehow and came out um, paranoid and then
Yeah.
killed himself.
Traumatized. Yeah.
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 And then there is a third person who you don't find out until near the very end was Leonard Shoulder, the man who called you
Yeah. The
to
guy
investigate Hobbs
who
Barrow.
lured us there. So Hobbs Barrow, you have to go to a farm. It's not a farm.
Yeah.
It's in like the moors of somebody's farm. Do you think the farmer was an ally or was he in on it trying to because we had to people were not letting us excavate. That's part of the
Yeah.
adventure game like puzzle design is
Right.
we were trying really hard to excavate this barrow and the guy whose land it was on was like nope, can't let you do it. It drove my brother insane, but we end up I don't know, something happened where he changed his mind or we convinced him to let us go dig.
That's a good, yeah, we how do we change his mind? I think we're just persistent.
I think we're just persistent because we're not going to stop. And
and we
yeah.
show him the stone that is identical to the stone his brother had.
Yeah. I think that he thinks that maybe there will be closure because he lost his brother
Mhm.
to this horrific thing and maybe something can be changed because remember that during this game
Right.
Thomasina starts to see things and have dreams and she's being told she could actually save her father if she follows if she like excavates if she follows this storyline, you know.
Right.
So I
Um
wonder if the farmer thought the same thing. Like maybe there could be closure. Maybe she can save her father.
right. I think, yeah, I wonder if I hadn't thought about that about the farmer. I thought he was just trying to wash his hands of it all, but maybe
Yeah.
he felt he could get some closure in it. I think my theory about Arthur Tillett, he is having so much trouble remembering things.
Yeah.
He and at one point he gets accosted by, he says, a man in a mask. This is when he goes to the bathroom while he's
Yeah.
about to tell you all about Leonard Shoulder and then disappears at the beginning of the game. I wonder, so eventually we find, and this is something else I'm curious about and I wonder what you think. You brought this up before. We find the milkman tied to a road sign
Yeah.
with flowers, hallucinogenic flowers stuffed in his mouth.
Yes.
I wonder if those hallucinogenic flowers are being used on Arthur Tillett too, because he seems more than just a drunk.
Yes.
At
Yes.
one
There
point,
are several
Mhm.
instances in the game where he's like, oh, he's like looking off into the middle distance,
Yeah,
trying to remember something. I do think that, yes, I do think he is being drugged essentially. Um, Now I do want to say I had to look this up. I didn't get this
Mhm.
because I missed something in the game. So that
Okay.
guy who is tied to the road sign with the flowers, as soon as you save him, there's a cutscene that happens right away. And it
Okay.
transports you to a different location. You can go back and look at that road sign and you can look at the flowers and it'll describe them as hallucinogenic flowers. And as soon
Oh,
as you
okay.
know that, there's a lot of theories that kind of come into play on what's really happening.
Well, so the another thing you might have missed, and I only caught it because of director's commentary, is y- there are two men in the pub the day before, and they are talking angrily about some guy, and they
Hmm.
say, if he thinks he can take it from here, and then some like vague threat, like
Okay.
he's got another thing coming, or we're gonna show him, and right before you walk off, you have to walk through the town to get to where the his name's Edward Ambrose, where he's tied up to the road sign,
Yeah.
and one of those men from the pub is walking the opposite direction, walking from where he is.
Really?
They are talking about him, and I don't know what the hell they are talking about when they say if he thinks he can take it from here. He is planning on running away
Hmm.
with one of the maids of Lord Panwick, who is the lord of the area, and he ends up being the big bad of the
Yeah.
game. Um,
Panswick?
Panswick, yeah.
Panswick, yeah.
So I don't know what they're referring to. That's something I thought I'd throw to you and see if you have any theories.
I didn't know, I don't. I'd have to kind
Yeah.
of relook at it. I'm sure I could come up with plenty of theories if I had noticed it, but
He doesn't seem to have any goals besides selling his milk and
yeah.
running away with that girl. So I don't know what they're referring to when they say if he thinks he can take it away from here.
Do you think that he, the milkman, was an ally and wanted to escape not just with his love, but to get help? Because like this town, this is a town where it's like if you're in, we don't really want you to leave because there's a secret here. You're kind of just stuck
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, maybe they're talking about the secret, right? Like if he
Yeah,
thinks he can take his knowledge of this town away from here, but he doesn't do anything to help you, and he doesn't tell you any sort of
right.
he doesn't give you any sort of hints as to what you might face. Then
That's
again,
true.
he's hallucinating when you meet him. So
There are these quote feral children that live in the moors, and you come across one and it's very folk horror. Like you see
Mhm.
her playing her violin
Yeah,
slash fiddle on top of a rock.
she's got like bright like whitish blonde hair, and she's wearing a
Right.
sack dress. It could not be more folklore.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just kind of wondering, was the point of that to set more atmosphere? Because that's totally fine. It is totally fine to simply have visuals that don't necessarily link to a greater plot point. But do
Mhm.
you think that the feral child was involved in this? Does she know Leonard's shoulder? Is she trying to do something with Thomasina, like mystify her with music or with hallucinogens?
That's interesting because there's somebody at some point in the game who calls her the devil's daughter. Says that
I think the
the
priest
devil's
says that.
daughter has been seen
Yeah.
around the cairn dancing or playing music or something like that. At some point, she gives you a fiddle bow that's broken, and you have to go fix it. You bring it back to her. She plays the fiddle on this cairn, the Devil's Toe, and you pass out.
Right.
And you wake up, she's gone, and the fiddle's there. And then later, you have to use that fiddle to enter the deepest chambers of the Barrow. And we'll real soon, I think, get to what the Barrow is and what all
Right.
this is leading to. But in essence, yeah, she leads you to your ultimate fate.
Yeah, I'm wondering if she is either because it seems like the people who are conspiring, even though they act like they're not,
Yeah.
they kind of know what they're doing. So she could, for me, that character could either be a part of it, she's just kind of playing a role, or she is part of this folklore. Like she is like this
The
maybe evil.
daughter
Yeah,
the daughter of the evil thing in the Barrow, right?
because weird shit happens. I mean,
So most of the game you're being not led around directly, but guided in certain senses and definitely watched by a cat who is also a goblin named Saxnut.
S-
And
I would rather not say that. Sax nut, really?
Saxnut Saxnut you find was a goblin who was just like a somewhat innocent goblin
Yeah,
living near or in the Barrow, and I guess occasionally playing little tricks on the town of Bewley. Like they tell a
right.
couple stories about a goblin and a cobbler, um, and at some point discovers this evil thing in Hobbs Barrow, tries to do his best to put to contain this evil thing or to put a stop to this evil thing, and instead gets taken over by him and becomes
Right.
a tool of this thing.
I felt
And
so bad. I felt so
so
bad
yeah,
for the goblin.
so through the game he's been leading you to your fate, which is freeing this thing. When I said earlier, though, that there were a bunch of people unconsciously conspiring against you, I was talking about all the children in the village. Um,
Right.
because there are a bunch of children who are also trying to keep the secret of Hobbs Barrow from you, and who also sort of guide you towards the wrong decisions. But I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I
No,
think
they're
they're just,
kids. Yeah.
yeah, their parents told them, hey, don't tell anybody about this thing.
Yeah.
And so they tell the lies that they're supposed to tell.
Yeah. And I think with Arthur Tillett, I think he is just a good person that
Yeah,
just got caught up in it and is also
right.
essentially being used as a tool, just like the goblin.
Back to the secret of Hobbs Barrow. You find out that your dad was here. He excavated Hobbs Barrow with those other people. They all had these horrible fates,
Mhm.
and what he discovered deep in the barrow was that a dead or an old and forgotten god named Abraxas Rex was contained in this barrow
Right.
and used to, I guess, bestow luck or good fortune on the people of Bewley.
That's what the people of Bewley said,
That's what
at
they say. Yeah,
least.
we don't
Yeah.
actually know.
Yeah.
Um, and he is basically represented by this purple light. Anytime Thomasina keeps having these dreams that are bathed in purple light, a lot of times that she has flashbacks. There's a purple light that happens before she does. And when she gets into the barrow, it's just all purple light everywhere.
Right. And
um,
also keep in mind the flowers are also purple. I thought that was interesting.
the hallucinogenic flowers?
Yeah. Pinky purple. Yep.
Interesting. I didn't notice that. I did
Yeah.
notice one thing that I'll see if you did. I'll bring it up towards the end. But so her dad did this ritual to bind Abraxas Rex to the burial mound, to Hobbs Barrow, and then it drives him insane. That becomes
Right.
his life work. When he was just an antiquarian trying to discover the secrets of the universe, or the secrets of man, rather, he discovers the secret of the universe and gives up his life to contain it. And
Right.
then his removal from his own daughter's life is the driving factor that leads her to follow the same path and undo the most important thing he's ever done.
Do you remember there's a flashback where the mom is after the dad becomes catatonic, the mom
Right.
is devastated and shocked, and she starts burning all of his notes and his journals, and you pick up
Yes.
a piece and it says Abraxas on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, "What's this?" And
And she's like,
she's
it's
like, "Just put
junk.
it in the
Burn it.
fire." Yeah,
Yeah.
just put it in the fire. So, yeah, it's just coming to terms with this person that you thought you knew.
Hmm.
Do you believe that the dad character was trying to protect Thomasina by saying everything is hogwash, knowing what he knew about Hobbs Barrow?
I'm of two minds about this. Either he didn't have any, and I think this is wrong. Either he didn't have spiritual beliefs until he found the god in the barrow, but that can't be true because he had the spell already to bind the god
Yeah,
when he got there. So I don't know. Maybe you're right. I think there is definitely something to be said there about this idea of, as parents, maybe we hide certain aspects of ourselves from our children to protect them
sure.
when the specific act of hiding it from Thomasina led to her ruin, and again, the potentially the, like, maybe destruction of the earth, who knows? Like, we
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean that
Yeah.
would be Lovecraftian if you do it
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah, but I think more so more than like destruction of the earth. I think there were just these set of like cult going characters that wanted the original god back, right? So in the town
Yeah.
of Bewley, you have the Catholic Church, but prior to that, there was another church, a
Yes.
different thing that worshipped a different god, and we later find that god is Abraxas, and the Lord is trying to get that church back up because he's the first, and this is um validated by some of the research I did about Abraxas. He's like the forgotten god, the god that's beyond gods. Like, how can we
Okay.
forget this god? So
Yeah, there's a puzzle in the Barrow. So again, eventually Thomasina makes it into the Barrow, and it's basically there's one day in the story where you have to do a lot of puzzles, but most of the game is led by uh, narrative rather than puzzles.
yes.
Until you get in the Barrow, and then it's just puzzle room after puzzle room after puzzle room.
Yeah.
And one of those puzzles is getting the head of all these other what seem like gods to look towards Abraxas.
Yes, they all have to be looking at Abraxas.
So yeah, the idea that this is a forgotten god, but sort of a leader amongst gods makes sense.
Yes,
And
definitely.
Rex means king.
I'm of like two minds when it comes to
Mhm.
like folk horror, but
Okay.
because of the nature of folk horror, I do tend to take it quite literally. So
Right.
it is my belief in this game that this god does exist, and
Mhm.
these characters are going the wrong route, essentially. As though I don't think it's just a cult that's following nothing. I think mostly in folk horror
Yeah.
that we can take that literally, like the gods
Well,
of H.P. Lovecraft.
I think it is. I think it is literal,
Yeah.
because I think some of these supernatural characters have had tangible effects on the world
Yeah.
throughout the story, and the game ends with. We'll talk about Thomasina's end in a minute, but the game ends with all those characters who were conspiring against you going into this rebuilt ancient church, and
Yes.
then a purple light filling the room. So I think, yeah, there definitely is a reality that they're
There
dealing
is
with here.
another theory
Hmm.
that a couple people have gone into depth with, and it's about those purple hallucinogenic flowers. So when you enter Hobbs Barrow in the first room, there are flowers, and you do have to interact with them. And because they are hallucinogenic, people speculated that maybe what happened was Thomasina just kind of lost her mind and none of this stuff was really happening, or the purple could represent some kind of hallucination, some kind of mental unwellness.
And her dad lost his mind, and
Right.
like everybody else that has interacted with the Barrow has lost their minds based on
Yeah.
hallucinogens, and some of the people are just sort of crazed believers, and others are.
So,
Mhm.
like when that church at the end was turning purple when people were going in there, is that meant to represent? Are they doing more cult like activities? Are they worshiping and then getting
Oh, right.
high
Are
on
they
these
just doing
hallucinogenic
drugs? Yeah.
flowers?
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I don't know how the farmer lost his hand in
Right.
that case. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Thomasina ended up with a fiddle. I
Right.
don't know. Like, there's a lot of very physical things that happen and are witnessed by other characters
Yeah. I just think
that,
it's interesting because
yeah.
there is such a human element of human beings conspiring together to push otherwise
Mhm.
paranormal things. Like obviously that the journal was pushed
Yeah,
underneath her room for her bedroom door, for example. So it's like both, right? So, in
right.
my opinion, I do take it literally. I do think in this particular story, there is a horror that has
Yeah.
been unleashed. But I do think it's interesting to think about like if the characters were all just cult like and conspiring and just helping each other out to get what they want so they could worship this other entity.
I agree, and I also agree. I also think that's what makes good horror, good folk tales is this idea of it
Absolutely.
was it real or was it not. I guess not good folk tales. Most folk tales are pretty pretty direct. It's pretty much like this
Yeah.
person went and did this thing and then this happened. It's like,
Yeah.
but people's modern reinterpretations of folk tales, when they're done well, often have this air of like, you don't know
Yeah.
if I the author am suggesting this is real or not.
I want to talk about the ending.
Yeah,
That is
so
what I want to talk about.
Thomasina gets through the Barrow, and again, basically with the guidance of Saxnut
Ugh.
and sort of reverse engineering her father's writings in the journal that the cult members slipped to her, she undoes the bindings of Abraxas and sets him free.
Yeah.
There's another color based thing that happens. Did you happen to notice?
Like when she's out of it,
Yeah.
I know that she gets sort of almost possessed by some kind of
Yes.
blinding light.
And her kerchief that she's wearing the whole game turns from red to purple.
Oh, okay. Good catch.
And in
Really
the
good catch.
thanks. And in the very beginning, you see the basically the cold open scene again.
Mhm.
And I noticed it this time, and that in a way that I didn't notice the first time I played the game. She doesn't say a word
Yeah,
when
right.
she's so the
She's
beginning of the
silent.
game. She's walking up to basically this hospital, and a
Yep.
man is standing outside just like making casual chit chat with her, and then says, it's raining and you're probably getting cold, you should head inside. And then she heads inside, but the whole time she's not talking, she's just standing there staring.
Yeah.
And so you see that scene again, and now you know why, or at least you could gather why she's not talking.
See, and I just thought like this guy was boring the hell out of her. And like,
Right.
yeah, of course she doesn't want it but then at the end when they go back to present day, I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're walking down the hallway then of the hospital, and anytime a nurse interacts with you, they basically explode into blood and gore.
Yes.
Um, and you enter your father's room, and the urn that he gave you like a little fake little archaeology dig one time,
Yeah.
that set your imagination alight
Yeah.
about antiquarianism. You pick it up and you bash him to death. Then,
It's really sad and really
yeah,
jarring.
not only did you undo his work, you killed him. The name of that chapter is Vindicta,
Yeah.
which means revenge. Also, here's a fun little bit of trivia before we keep going on this. First day, the chapter is called Adventus, which means arrival. Second
Nice.
day, chapter is called Expiscon. Expiscon. How would you pronounce
Right.
that? Expiscon. Anyway,
Yeah.
Expedition, which means discover in Latin. Third day is called Incantamentum, which was actually supposed to be the name of the game.
That's a cool name, but also it's kind of a tough name. I can see why
Yeah.
maybe they changed. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. I don't have an exact translation for this, but incanta means to sing or recite, and mentum means like an instrument or a medium. So basically, I guess it
Yeah.
means like
Like to cast magic, I thought it might mean.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. So yeah, because you're reciting, you're the Okay, all right. Yeah, so you're crafting a spell, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, Thomasina is taken over by Abraxas, who uses her to get his revenge on her dad and kill him. Then you find out that the whole game is being narrated in a letter to Thomasina's mom from jail, where sweet
Yeah.
little Arthur Tillett visits her every week.
Yeah, Arthur is the only one who visits Thomasina.
Yeah. I
And
wonder if you're
it's
mean
so
to him
sad.
in the game, does he still?
I think that's a great question. I would love to know that. Cuz yeah, so you do have those choices.
So
The ending is
yeah,
so jarring because I mean, I lost my dad when I was 14. I had a very close relationship. So as I'm
Mhm.
playing this game, I'm seeing this close relationship, this story
Yeah.
unfold. And then she murders her father, presumably
Yes.
under possession of Abraxas, because he's just getting his revenge on
And
being,
she's
yeah,
still wearing the purple handkerchief, even though
yeah.
she's got her formal dress on.
I found the ending letter to be very interesting because she made a comment about like being, there are some comments about being like mentally unwell. And I'm just kind of curious if they're trying to say that Thomasina has some of those problems and that could cause her to murder somebody or act up. And it's interesting as well because they say her mom was always very cold to Thomasina, and I want to know
Right.
why. I want to know why the mom was always cold to her daughter.
So you're wondering if there is some sort of violence to Thomasina that
Right.
is implied but we don't see.
Correct. Yeah. Is there
That
something
she
else influencing her?
was she maybe like a cruel or violent child.
I think the relationship between her and her dad was weird. Like they had these heartwarming moments, but then he would leave and she would say, "I hate you," and
Yeah.
it was just a little bizarre to me. It wasn't your typical father daughter
Yeah.
relationship. And again, why was the mom always so cold? There's just an implication there that Thomasina might have her own problems just being influenced by something else. It's not enough to like murder people.
No, right.
It's not enough, obviously. I have mental problems and I can't explode people into, bloody pulps, although that would be amazing. But it's just
Yeah.
it is interesting that they set that up as well. I think they're just setting up multiple theories.
Yeah, I think so too. And I get that this ending is brutal and
It's
difficult.
brutal, guys.
Um
Understand that this is not what I wanted.
but I I can't think of another way this story could have ended. If Thomasina had beaten, if there was a big confrontation with Abraxas and she beat him, like, then what happens? Then that she has to fight all the members of the town? Uh
Right.
or, are they all there and they get swept up in an Indiana Jones like, energy vortex or something? I just think that wouldn't have fit with the rest of the game, and it wouldn't have fit this theme of a woman sort of trying to reconcile this image of her father
Yeah.
with him being a different person than she thought. And like, if the conspiracy had failed, right, then what was the
Yeah.
point of the conspiracy? If and she had gone to these deep lengths to, again, unwittingly just undo everything her father did. And if at the last moment she turned around and was like, nope, I saved it, and then her father woke up from the coma and gave her a big hug, like, I don't know that the story would have meant anything.
Right. I don't know if that was going to happen, but there's this sense of as you're playing as Thomasina, you're just really rooting for her
Yeah.
to do the right thing and to uncover these weird things that are happening within this town.
And
I
survive.
Yeah, and survive at
Yeah.
least. So she does survive, but there are some things that are worse than death, and this is
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah,
Her
probably
having
beating
to
your father to
Yeah,
death is probably worse than just
yeah.
yeah.
I honestly thought that she might, and this upset me too as I played the game. I'm like, I think my character might die. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought that the cult members were using her as a tool and then just kind of dispose of her because then she'll
Right.
not be, she won't be useful anymore. And since the other people who looked at Hobbs Barrow had such devastating consequences, I thought hers would be that she would die, she would perish, and that would also be upsetting, to be honest. I was kind of prepping myself for that. I'm like, this is not going to have a happy ending. This
You know,
ending was especially horrific and upsetting.
I can't imagine that cult murdering, right? Like, uh they do some weird things and some shitty things, and but basically they think Abraxas is a good god, and they think
Correct.
Abraxas is going to bring health and wealth and fortune and luck
Yeah.
to the
And like
people of the town.
harvest and
Yeah, and they're not oppressive to the people who don't believe. They don't do anything.
they don't harm them.
They don't harm them. They let Thomasina go right after she does what she needs to do for them. Even Arthur Tillett, who is threatening to destroy their plans, they threaten him and maybe
Right.
drug him. They don't kill him. They're not violent to anybody, and it is questionable whether or not the man who is tied to tied to the sign with flowers stuffed in his mouth, whether that had anything to do with the cult. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. Or
I
if it was a
guess it's a
diversion of sorts.
I guess it's a little bit implied because it seems that the only place those flowers grow are in the Barrow.
Correct. That's correct. That's the only place you can get those flowers. So yeah, I thought this ending was actually worse than death. It is so harrowing, and yet it's so fitting
Yeah.
for folk horror. I mean, look at the Wicker Man. That's not a happy ending. That's a horrific ending.
I haven't seen The Wicker Man, but I know I've seen Midsommar, and that is a horrific ending.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty brutal. But I will say for Midsummer that the lead character, who's also a woman, she seems to accept her fate. She almost kind of smiles at the
My,
end. And
she
that almost gives you a glimmer of like, I think she might be okay with this. Whereas
well,
Thomasina is just
she does, but
destroyed.
my take on the end of Midsummer is it's that she has been indoctrinated into the cult and she has been successfully brainwashed.
Right.
Um,
That would have
because
even been a better ending for Thomasina if she had been brainwashed and like indoctrinated into the cult. Because that
right, and
was one
just
of the
never
most
gone home.
depressing endings I've ever seen in
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had to understand that Abraxas was vicious and cruel, and for the potential questionably good intentions of these townsfolk, they are being deceived.
Yeah.
Abraxas is horrible.
Yes.
um, a loving god wouldn't take revenge. So yeah, well, that's Excavation of Hobbs Barrow. I think that's
So
pretty much all
depressing.
we have to say about it. I did think of one other thing I want to talk about, but it doesn't have to be in the spoilers section.
Oh, okay.
So do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up? And then in the outro, I'll just tell you my other thought.
Look, I'm very upset at this
Mhm.
ending, but I just want to say that that is the nature of art. It does not have to be enjoyable to have an impact or happy.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it as an artist myself. It certainly had its impact on me. And even though I don't like it and I'm kind of critiquing it a little bit, I thought there was going to be maybe a different ending. I think it's the right ending.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that they didn't hold back with that. They really stayed true to the whole genre.
I hope this team continues making games that are inspired by these like folk themes.
Me
Not
too.
even necessarily horror, even though they're good at it.
Yeah.
But they talked about doing a game about this worm character. I would love to see that game. I want to see
Yeah.
more of this sort of thing from these developers. All right, you want to play that music, and then we'll head for the descent.
Okay. We will be right back. Hey everyone, we're back. It's me, Pushing Up Roses, and my precious co-host, extraordinary Matt Ockamp. Welcome back, Matt.
I'm extraordinary. Yeah,
Extraordinary.
being something other than ordinary, I guess, isn't always a compliment, though. So, okay, so now we're out of the spoiler section. Welcome back,
Yes.
listeners who fast forwarded. There's something else I wanted to talk about, which is there's a musical segment in this game. There's like a
Yes.
musical number.
Yep.
That is so bizarre and so completely out. How did you feel about it?
Listen, Matt, I'm gonna tell you something.
Okay.
Something glitched out on my Switch during that part. It was all nonsense, so I skipped it. So I'm
Wow. Okay.
sorry.
So
I was gonna
it is
mention that
basically
earlier, but yeah, I oh.
it is basically just a man playing a song that the lyrics are like thematically tied to the game, but the song is like it's like a it was like an acoustic guitar singer-songwriter song, but sort of in the you know, melancholy, depressing late 90s alternative style, like Stained or
I was
something or
just
like
gonna say that. I'm
yeah.
like, "Oh, it's like Stained."
That's what I was trying not to say because I figured that would be mean. And this guy clearly has talent, and I'm sure in any other context, I don't know that you know I would be a huge fan of that music, but I'm sure his music's very, very good for people who like that. But in this game, it's just so out of place. A game that was so married to its themes and
Sure.
again its color palette, its sound escapes, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to a song from like the late 90s early 2000s uh
I'm
and
on
like
the outside. Just Stained
um
starts playing.
yeah, was Chris Cornell comes in and starts
Yeah, like Soundgarden, yeah. If I review the game, I'm gonna, like, snip in Stained, just so you all know. Also Stained, terrible band, horrible lead singer, but all a part of our lives if you are, in fact, a millennial like us.
yeah, I definitely bought Stain's first album.
Oh god.
But yeah, when I was when I guess I would have been a middle schooler at that time.
Yeah.
And I thought, the new rap rock
And
craze
new
was
yeah,
cool.
there's some
I
new
had a
new metal coming out. I love Linkin
yeah,
Park. I still love Linkin Park. That's my jam.
I couldn't listen to a second of anything called new metal today. There's not one bit of it I enjoy. Even the stuff that people have revisited as like this actually wasn't bad, like System of a Down. I
They're
cannot.
fine.
No, that
No. Oh.
it's also bad. Uh, I
What
got.
about
I
Limp
mean,
Bizkit?
oh my god. Yeah,
I did it all for the nookie.
I had like 2, 3 Limp Bizkit albums.
Horrifying.
You know who I haven't tried to go back and listen to again though was Korn. What do you think Korn feels like to listen to in 2024?
Not great. Not positive vibes, but I will say I didn't like Corn back in the day, and I don't like Corn now, but they did do a couple interesting collab/covers that I liked. They did an interesting collaboration with Robert Smith. You're either gonna love it or hate it. And they did
Right.
a cover of an Alice in Chains song. I think it was Wood. And I thought that was very good. But I can't go back and listen to Freak on a Leash. That's just not
Interesting.
that's
Yeah.
I'm just not that girl anymore.
I this was that was right at my cusp. Like the rap rock new metal thing was, right at the cusp of me finding punk and then getting deep into like street punk and like actually,
Yeah.
so it was a necessary part of my transition, right? Like I had to go to MTV and listen to Limp Bizkit and Blink 182 and be like, these are good. And then that would lead me to discover, say, Bad Religion, which would lead me to discover the Clash and the Sex Pistols, which would lead me to discover the Subhumans and like good punk, like
Yeah. I think
modern
that hey,
punk.
wait, I think the Clash is good punk.
Oh
I do
no, I'm
like the Clash.
saying the Clash is good punk. I'm just
Okay.
saying in comparison to like Blink 182, who have lodged themselves in my affections. Like it's so not my type of music anymore. But
I
I
like
still listen to
them.
Blink 182.
I think Adam's song is a jam. It's got great drumming. It's got a
That's
great hook.
probably my least favorite Blink 182
What in the world is going on?
song. These days, I like folk music. I like indie rock. I like
Sure.
and I like any sort of punk that wasn't Blink 182 and Good
Right.
Charlotte or whatever.
I mean,
Like,
that's pop punk.
well,
That's
yeah,
more
but
for me, that's more pop punk.
sure, but I would also call like No Effects and maybe Bad
Sure.
Religion and Masked Intruder. Like I would call those all pop punk too.
That's fair.
but they're just, sort of like a level deeper into something good rather than
Yeah.
something horrible.
You know what I've been doing?
Yeah.
So I've been
Yeah.
going through some stuff,
Mhm.
as some people may or may not know, and the way I soothe myself, and you know what? My therapy told me there's no wrong way to grieve, so nobody is allowed to judge me because I have a note from my therapist. So I've been, I tend to revisit things that I guess you could call them nostalgic, but what I'm really revisiting lately is I found a Puddle of Mud song that I used to like back in the day,
My God. Okay,
and I
there's one wrong way to grieve.
wait, no, stop. No, this is a no judgment zone. So
Okay,
I
okay,
listened
okay.
to that and now I'm like in that era. It's not new metal, it's like post grunge. So
Okay.
like in that late 90s, early 2000s, like Puddle of Mud, Stained, Stone Temple Pilots I think are more grudge, but they had like Sour Girl. Like that kind of music.
Sure.
There's like I don't know how to describe this kind of music. But yeah, so I've been listening to that, you guys, and it started with like Drift and Die by Puddle of Mud, and then it went to like Stained and like Stone Temple Pilots, and that's what I'm all about
Wow.
because it reminds me of being a teenager, you know?
Okay, I'll say this, if we're talking about embarrassing music, is
Did I
I think
say it was embarrassing?
uh, you know, I think the most embarrassing part of my music habits is how often I listen to like comedy or novelty music as if it's just like regular music and I like jam to it. So like I'll
Oh, I
put
love that.
on Weird Al as
Oh,
if it's
fuck yeah.
music and like I'll listen to The Lonely Island or
Yeah.
Bo Burnham or Jonathan Colton or Moxie Fruvis. Like I listen to these I haven't listened to him much lately, but like Flight of the Conchords
I love Flight of the
or
Conchords.
Tim Minchin, like I'll put on their albums and listen to them, right? Like
Yeah.
rather than just like, oh, isn't this funny or isn't this a piece of an interesting piece of entertainment? Like I'll just like I'll be like singing along.
No, I think that's super fair. Like my dad was a big fan of like country novelty. There seemed to be like
Mhm.
a lot of overlap in like like southern country western novelty music. So I'm talking about people
Right,
like Roger Miller,
right.
and he had I might still have him. He had a bunch of Weird Al 45s. They're super cool.
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
yeah, so they that leaked onto me. I've seen Weird Al in concert like 3 times. He's
I've seen him once.
fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
I just love him so much.
I'll also say this, like I threw Jonathan Colton in there, but I think like that's music that's meant to be just put on and listened to and sang along
Yeah,
to. I don't think
I agree.
I think there's novelty. He has novelty songs and there's novelty aspects to his music, but I think that's meant to be.
Oh, yeah.
That probably falls more in the singer songwriter category. They Might Be Giants is one of my favorite bands,
I
and
love them.
Randy Newman's one of my favorite
Randy
artists.
Newman?
Listen to his early albums. He is very, very good.
I am not listening to short people again, and you can't make me.
Well, that's not a good one.
Here's a hot question. What is your favorite Weird Al non-parody song, but parody style song? What is your favorite Weird Al parody style
Mhm,
song?
mhm. I was gonna say that's easy, and then I can't remember the name. So
That's
I
easy. Wait a minute.
I know it. I like it's the sort of thing where like probably because we've been talking about this of talking about um something completely unrelated for so long. I'm like down the rabbit hole. So I'm gonna have to pull it up.
Do you want to know what mine is in the
Yes, I
meantime?
do want to know what yours is.
Mine is called You Make Me, and it's an Oingo Boingo parody
Hmm.
style, and I really love it. I saw him play it in concert. It's not one he always plays in concert, and I was just like, it's so catchy and so energetic. It's very Oingo Boingo, and that's my fave.
Well, he has a couple like legitimately good breakup songs
Yeah, he
that
does.
I really enjoy. Also, speaking of like the style parodies that you were just talking about, that he had that Oingo Boingo one, he does a They Might Be Giants style parody called Everything You Know Is Wrong, which is really
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Um, but Since You've Been Gone is incredible. And because he's stranded all alone at the gas station of love and he has to use the self-service pump. It's a masturbation joke in a Weird Al song, but that
Oh
song is so
God,
good. What is it called? What is it called?
is it is it a love song?
Yeah.
Is it One
What
More
is
Minute?
it that's Yes, it is 1 more minute.
Yay!
Yes,
I did it.
100%, 1 more minute. Oh my goodness.
I saved you.
Like I said, like that is my easy, like always, like yeah, that is the best Weird Al song.
Nice.
But for whatever reason, I could not pull the name of it from my cavern of a brain. Okay, we have gone
We've gone
way
over.
past the amount of time that we wanted. Like this was going to
That's
be the
okay.
short one.
I know. It's okay. It's okay. When you get me talking about music, there's no going back. It's like my first love.
Guys, email us at mattandroses@gmail.com and let us know what you think when we go completely off topic in these final segments. And if you like it, we would love to keep doing that. But
just
if
like
you'd
to
rather,
talk.
we're the only two who enjoy us talking about weird novelty music, then maybe it's not worth recording and releasing.
And
So
Stained.
here's the thing. I think our next episode, which again, if you email us now, you're not going to get a question in time for our Q&A episode. But you still should email us because we're going to be doing them, I think, regularly.
Yeah, we're going to try to. But yeah, the next episode, I think we're going to have a good focus because there's been some very good questions that I think are going to spark conversation.
Yeah, one thing I want to ask for people when they email us at mattandroses@gmail.com, put in your emails. We haven't asked this before, and I think it was a mistake. Put in your emails whether you want us to say your name or not. Or if you have a fun pseudonym. Like the Ann Landers. Like if you're like Loose Cranks in Louisiana.
From
something that
Loose
relates
Crank.
something that relates to your question, but like that would be so fun. Next episode, yeah, I'm going to be in New Orleans.
So jealous.
Yeah, and I think the episode should still be out on time, but if it's a little bit late, that's why.
That's why.
And
I am going to text Matt every single day Gabriel Knight trivia things because he'll be in New Orleans. And I'll be like,
and I'll
are you
ignore
there?
them because I'm on vacation.
But Matt, go to the Hanfur in the cathedral.
Yeah, I'll use a piece of brick to write on Marie Laveau's tomb or whatever. Yeah. So, next episode is going to be a Q&A episode. You're not going to get your questions in time if you email us now, but email us for future segments. And we are also part of the Adventure Game Hotspot Network. Go to adventuregamehotspot.com to check them out. Maybe you can see a review written by me. Also, they have a Kickstarter up for the Adventure Game Fanfare, the first adventure game focused fan convention in North America, happening in July. I think that's all we got. Roses.
That's all we got.
You want to take us out with our catchphrase?
Yes. Thank you all for listening to us talk about adventure games. And always remember that podcast is art and art is suffer. Like a Stained song.